The suspect, Brandon Elliott, was actually on parole at the time of his arrest overnight. According to state records, he was actually convicted of murdering his own mother back in 2002 in the Bronx. He did 16 years in state prison before he was ultimately released in 2019. And now he is back behind bars once again for another serious crime that has made waves across the globe after this video has surfaced. Elliott was arrested where he lives at what we believe to be a homeless hotel on West 40th Street, just a few blocks from here. Records show he has an arrest history dating back nearly 2 decades, as you see, for assault. Then in 2002, he was arrested and sent to prison for the killing of his mother. However, he was released and he moved to Manhattan after his parole. Now he's under arrest for this high-profile attack in Hell's Kitchen Monday. Surveillance video showing who police say is the 38-year-old randomly knocking a 65-year-old woman to the ground and stomping her while saying, "You don't belong here." Authorities say this disturbing hate crime just one of 33 similar incidents against Asians so far this year here in the city. The victim has a pelvis injury and contusions to her head. The shocking video, of course, enraged the city, but it helped lead to his quick arrest.
I don't care who you are, I don't care what you do, you've got to help your fellow New Yorker. And if you see someone being attacked, do whatever you can.
It's definitely a gut check to have it happen on your front door. It's definitely like a kick in the face of reality.
The doorman to the apartment building is who the mayor is referring to. This all apparently happened in front of them, and they have faced scrutiny for failing to help the woman and literally closed the door on her after it happened. However, the doorman's union claims they did ultimately call for help. Meanwhile, the suspect in the case, Brandon Elliott, is awaiting arraignment in Manhattan Criminal Court later on today on charges including assault and hate crimes. Reporting live in Hell's Kitchen, I'm Anthony DiLorenzo.
So, now brothers is losing their jobs. It's illegal now to even see a hate crime on an Asian and not jump in. And sisters voted for this. 97% voted for this. When your communities are filled with murder victims, assault victims, the murder rate in your community is through the roof. The only people dying in many of these cities are black people. The only people being attacked in many of these cities are black people. Sisters voted 97%. And you brothers voted 75% for this. Who would have thunk it? This white liberal, white Latino liberal says, so while the question of whether or not Brandon Elliott should have been paroled should be asked, we should also be asking what we can do as a society to make sure that people who are paroled receive the resources they need to live a sustainable life and thrive in our city. See, this is the white liberal. They, from their canopy or from the balcony, from their perch, they look down and say, well, if there were more rec centers, there would be no crime amongst black teens. And if there were more resources, parolees wouldn't reoffend. Well, listen, some of these guys are bad guys. Okay? It's bad guys out there. The streets is rough. And a lot of those bad guys are black. And we don't want them in our community no matter how many damn resources you got. And it's him and the Hollywood elites like Kim Kardashian. Their whole thing when they want to help out black people is something to do with re-injecting some criminal back into our community taking some trash that has already been swept out of our community and putting it back in our community. She thinks she's helping the black community by clamoring and spending millions of dollars, flying all over the place, raising all type of awareness galas and fundraisers and calling everybody and getting and doing interviews and lawyers and legal aids and all the time that takes reviewing cases and overturning, trying to get things overturned to help out the Rodney Reeds of the world. This guy spent a lot of time trying to get this guy put back in the black community. And who is Rodney Reed? Well, he's not a lot different than Brandon Elliott, the man who just assaulted that Asian woman. Rodney Reed is on death row for murdering and raping Stacey Stites. Okay? Period, point blank. How do we know? Or how did they come to that conclusion? Kim Kardashian will say, well, a white woman was found dead and they pulled the black man's name out of a hat and charged him with it because, you know, that's what happens in this country. A white woman dies and they just start rounding up brothers. Right, brothers? Ain't that what happened? When a white woman dies, you go in for questioning, right? Wrong. It never happens. None of y'all ever been brought in for questioning for no damn death of no white woman. But this guy was. And initially, he denied it. Told investigators he didn't know nothing about it. Didn't know her. Didn't know what nothing. He was just as confused as them. What's going on? Then they did the DNA test and found out that the semen inside of the woman matched his. So it was his semen inside of the body. Then he said, oh, okay, well, yeah, I do the woman. We were having a clandestine affair where only us two know. I didn't tell any of my friends. She didn't tell any of her friends. The only two people on the planet that knew we were having an affair was me and her. And we had consensual sex the day before her death. That's what happened. This is the guy, Kim Kardashian, thinks she's helping the black community by getting all her Hollywood people to get this guy put back in our community. And they don't care when they come back in the community and harm a black person. They only care when they come back in the community and harm a person in a high profile or a protected group, the newest protected group now. So it goes on. Listen. So okay, you still not convinced. You know, the white man set Rodney Reed up to told the black community back. They knew if Rodney Reed went down, the black community would be in shambles. During the penalty phase of the trial, the state argued for capital punishment. They argued to put him on death penalty. Why? Because he was suspected in the rapes of four more women, a 12-year-old, and another woman. So there were 6 more rapes where he was the main suspect in. Okay? And Kim still wants him free. Well, he didn't do this one. And this is how white liberals help the black community. By bringing guys like this back in our community. And what do? They reoffend. Just like the Brandon Elliott guy did with that Asian woman. Nothing about Asian hate. It's about you letting goddamn criminals back into our community. And we don't want them. White liberals, find another way to help us.
It's being called a hate crime assault, causing more pain in our Asian American community. That awful video showing a woman being brutally beaten while others stood by and just did nothing. But overnight, some relief, police announcing a new arrest in the case. And I want to warn you, the video you're about to see is disturbing. Overnight, police in New York City arresting the man they say was caught on surveillance video, brutally attacking a 65-year-old Asian woman in Midtown Manhattan. The suspect, identified as 38-year-old Brandon Elliott, now charged with felony assault as a hate crime. He's accused of violently kicking the woman to the ground and stomping on her head, all while shouting anti-Asian statements, according to police. The attacker then seen walking away as security guards in a nearby building stand and watch.
The most painful part of that video was watching that man close the door on that woman. And I hope that as a country, we don't do the same thing.
The Biden administration now launching new efforts to curb the growing violence, committing nearly $50 million to help AAPI survivors of violence and assault, and $33 million towards studying bias and xenophobia.
The Biden administration launching a new initiative to curb the violence. Well, I'll be damned. If what ends up happening is that y'all raise $90 million for Black Lives Matter to funnel to the Democratic Party for Joe Biden's campaign, if y'all used your dead sons' bodies as props to create this false narrative of Trump racist emboldening police and killing black people all over the place, and that's who's actually killing black people, and it's only because Trump, and we got to get Trump out of office and get Biden in. If you guys, your women voted 97% for this, and all you end up getting out of this, after turning states that were red for decades, centuries, flipping states left and right, and registering millions of voters, knocking on doors, making millions of phone calls. If after all of that, all that work, all you get out of this is another crime bill, that'll be the damnedest thing I ever seen in my life. And I can't even blame him. He's Johnny on the spot again. You talk about just a coincidence. I don't even know if you call it a coincidence. Like, because the 90s, all the black leaders and public opinion were like, lock all these niggas up. We tired of them. They doing too much. Crime is through the roof. Crime is too much. We need a crime bill. Joe Biden whipped up a crime bill, handed it to Clinton, got it passed, and the rest is history. Crime went down. Crime went down, Jack. Crime went down. Here we are, 20, 30 years later, 25, 26 years later, and you about to get another crime bill. Wow. Unbelievable. And I can't, and I've been very critical, I can't, man, if you had to ask me, how many of y'all, if it was a vote, if this was like, if they asked the people, do we need another crime bill? 1 for yes, 2 for no. How would you vote? 1 for yes, 2 for no. I would have to vote yes.
The Biden administration now launching new efforts to curb the growing violence, committing nearly $50 million to help AAPI survivors of violence and assault, and $33 million towards studying bias and xenophobia. Attorney General Merrick Garland also announcing the Justice Department will conduct an expedited 30-day review, prioritizing criminal investigations and prosecutions. The disturbing wave of anti-Asian violence in all corners of the country has...
Now, when you see these 4 screens, you already know who the suspects are and they're doing it. But that's not my point. Think about how many screens you would need to do this for black people. How many black victims of crime there are. But it's because the black victims, they can't make it a racial thing because it's black on black. Everything's got to be about race. And black people are starting to see that because we're on the other side. Usually it's the white man or a white guy killed the black dude. Yeah, but it was 600 murders in this city last year and 599 of them was black on black. Yeah, but we on march and protest for the one where a white guy killed a kid who was broke in his house. All he needed was he was just trying to get his clothes for school. Okay? So now we're on the other side of it. We're the bad guy. We the boogeyman. Okay? We don't like it. We don't like it. It's not fun being in a city where, a very violent city like New York, where, as I showed you yesterday in the video, 90% of the murder victims, where you have hundreds of, like 100 people been murdered already this year. And 90% of them are black, and none of them are Asian. Not one of them is Asian, yet black people are the face of hate crimes finally, which they deserve because white people were taking it for a while. White people took the beef. White people held that L for being the reason Asians were being attacked. Finally, they're starting to be like, wait a second. 99 out of 100 of these is black folk doing it to Asians. But black victims, I thought Black Lives Mattered. We did all that Black Lives Matter to set up this administration focusing all their attention not on black lives. And that's what you get for focusing. That's what we get because we focused on police. We tried to blame the police. We didn't focus on the real people who are killing black people, other black people. And because we didn't focus on that, karma got us. The law of the universe said, "Oh, okay, you want to focus on the random 14 unarmed black people got killed last year by cops, including Rashard Brooks and Breonna Taylor." And you want to focus on that when 7,000 black people were murdered in the streets by other black people? Okay, the universe said, okay, I got something for you. Well, when you get your guy in office, we gonna make you the bad guy. And we gonna make the group that makes up 2% of the whole population of this country, the smallest minority, we gonna put them in your place. Wow. Deep. If you look at black people, so spiritual. Every spiritual. Look, you gotta, you know what I'm saying? It's deep, man. Ain't it deep? You gotta look at it, man. You gotta look at the whole thing, man. Look at the whole picture, man. Okay. Ain't that deep? Ain't that crazy? You're now the bad guy, and the smallest of minorities is in your place.
The disturbing wave of anti-Asian violence in all corners of the country has law enforcement experts concerned about copycat incidents.
There are those who are out there doing it because they're seeing others do it, because it's getting the attention that it's been getting, and that is contributing to the numbers of crimes that we're seeing.
But on the ground, young leaders in local communities are speaking out, fueling new hope.
I learned that we can make a difference.
Like 12-year-old Korean-American Mina Fedor, who organized a rally here in California, bringing more than 1,000 people together to demonstrate against anti-Asian hate.
It is unfair that it is happening, and yeah, it makes me very sad and upset about this. And yeah, I just wanted to do something.
What's your goal? What's your hope?
Raising awareness, also raising youth voices for them not to be afraid to stand up for themselves and other people.
Now, in all of this hate, Mina was just so inspiring to talk to. She told me she first started organizing last year after a family member of her was coughed on in public. She wanted to do something to make a difference. And meanwhile, in New York, the management of that apartment building where the attack occurred, they say the staffers who witnessed it and stood by and did nothing have now been suspended pending an investigation.
I'm not saying he should trend, speaking of Brandon Elliott. I was referring to my timeline, wasn't even talking about the Atlanta shooter nearly as much as they were Brandon Elliott. What planet do these black people live on? Brandon Elliott's not going to be on CNN 24 hours. Even if Brandon Elliott had did what that white guy did in Atlanta, CNN would have covered it for 10 minutes and moved on. You wouldn't have got any tweets from basketball players. You wouldn't have got any tweets from actors that weren't Asian. What is this guy talking about? Black privilege. We love denying black privilege, man. We love denying it, but we get mad when white people deny white privilege. Now, I do believe that there are things where white people are privileged. Certain scenarios where they have privilege. Not as much as y'all think, but yeah. But there are a bunch of ones where black people have privilege. And this guy's got the nerve to say, I'm not saying Brandon Elliott shouldn't trend. I was referring to my timeline, wasn't even talking about the Atlanta shooter nearly as much as they were Brandon Elliott. Black Twitter is in shambles, arguing back and forth when they should have been that united talking about that white man. What planet do these black people live on? This white guy, or Arab, or whatever you want to call him, says Brandon Elliott doesn't represent black people as a group. Just like the suspected white supremacists you post about all the time don't represent white people as a group. Well, God damn it, yes, he's talking to Tariq Nasheed, though. Listen, that white man represent all white people. In the mainstream media, they were talking about white supremacy. The second they heard it happen, they were talking about white supremacy. The Boulder shooter, he wasn't even a white man. They were talking about white supremacy. They talk about white supremacy until they find out who did it. Anytime there's a mass shooting, white supremacy until they find out who did it. And then they drop the story like a bad habit. This white liberal says, Brandon Elliott has been charged with a hate crime after beating an elderly Asian lady in New York. Robert Aaron Long killed many Asian women, but had a bad day in Georgia. What the fuck? She's talking about the goddamn police officer who interrogated the Atlanta shooter, the Atlanta spa brothel shooter. The detective who interrogated him said that when he was talking to the press that the shooter had a bad day, because that's what the guy told him. So white liberals jumped on that. Well, he said he had a bad day, as if they're trying to excuse what he did as being part of a bad day. No, that was the reason he said he did it, jackass. He said he had a bad day. It might not. I don't understand what's so hard about that. He said he had a bad day. That's why he did it. The police told you that. Well, the white people are because he's white. They only said he had a bad day. See what I'm talking about? There's no privilege for white people in the media. Both men attacked Asian women. Why can't federal authorities step up where states fail? Brandon Elliott, another brother arrested in the last few weeks, yet white privilege. And this guy says, the black guy that beat the elderly Asian woman in New York is Brandon Elliott. He is on parole for killing his own mother. Criminal justice reform is working. He used to murder people. Now he's just committing hate crime assaults against women. Next, he only doing carjackings at gunpoint. Going a little too deep here, Brandon Elliott is a murderer, assaulted, and knucklehead. He just happens to be black. There is not a black problem. There is a responsibility and accountability problem. This game's a people problem and crosses all races. Now, for the record, the majority of the black people I know are very polite. Very polite, very nice. Majority of the black people that I meet or just cross paths with are very nice and very polite. Or they minding their business. However, the majority of people in prison are black, and they ain't in there for marijuana. They've been decriminalizing marijuana all over the place. They decriminalized marijuana in D.C. a few years ago, like 4 years ago. The D.C. jail is overcrowded now. It's so packed, it's like sardines in there now. And they decriminalized weed 4 years ago. So, both things can be true. If you're out and about and you're moving around, the majority of black people you're going to meet are going to be either not give you any problem or be polite or nice. And the majority of the criminals in this country could be black. Both things could be true. We got to stop being an all or nothing race. Always or never race. It's always or it's never. Living in these large, like, just dichotomies. It's this or it's that. No. Two things can be true. It don't got to be always or never. But make sure you always hit the like button. Make sure you always take the $5 challenge. Make sure you always get a channel membership. We should have all green. Everybody in the chat should have a name should be green. Everybody should have that little green or yellow insignia next to their name for the channel membership. And that super chat should be lit up because nobody brings the news like we do. And I want to get back to this white liberal, what this white Latino liberal said. He said, so while the question of whether or not Brandon Elliott should have been paroled should be asked, we should also be asking what we can do as a society to make sure that people who are paroled receive the resources they need to live a sustainable life and thrive in our city. So these people need to be able to live sustainable lives and thrive in our city. And if you do that, a guy who killed his mother and did 17 years in the joint, you give him a bunch of money and a bunch of stuff, he won't go around kicking 80, 60, 65-year-old women in the head. Well, sorry, buddy. I got news for you. You can give this guy, you can give a bad guy, a criminal, a hardened criminal, a nut. You can give them all the money in the world. Just look at rappers. Look at athletes. You can give them all the money in the world. And if they're bad guys, they're going to be bad guys. And white liberals got to stop doing this, because as you heard in the article, he lives in a hotel. This guy, Brandon Elliott, lives in a 5-star hotel in downtown Manhattan that's been transformed into a homeless shelter. A room where if you wanted to stay in that same hotel before it was a homeless shelter, if you wanted that same room, you pay $1,100-$1,200 a night.
Business leaders on the west side of Midtown are the latest group imploring Mayor de Blasio to close hotels that have been converted to homeless shelters during the pandemic. After residents of the Upper West Side called for the same thing, they were criticized for not in my backyard NIMBYism. As Chris Glorioso explains, the Midtown business leaders say this is different.
It is one of the pandemic's vexing problems. Most crime is actually down in Midtown, but videos like this, an unprovoked man slugging a random pedestrian, and scenes like these have fueled a perception that swaths of Midtown West are the Wild West.
The streets feel a little less safe than they were before.
Dan Biederman, Barbara Blair, and Robert Bonfatto are presidents of 3 West Side Business Improvement Districts, known as BIDs. They say the de Blasio administration's decision to turn Midtown hotels into temporary pandemic homeless shelters has led to a concentration of social problems like mental illness and addiction.
We must pick up like 75 to 100 needles a day.
Where can we put people where they're free from fear, where they're not living in the streets and defecating in the streets and harassing people in the streets?
The BIDs are calling on the mayor to close down hotel shelters or redistribute them more equitably across the 5 boroughs. They've created this map plotting 20 homeless hotels in Midtown West, and they want to fend off criticism that this is one of those NIMBY, not in my backyard crusades, because these BIDs actually fund homeless outreach teams like this one.
Good morning, sir. Still thinking about coming inside, man?
These social workers are from Urban Pathways, a nonprofit that tries to connect homeless people with permanent housing. On this morning, they found Alex Harper. He'd been living on the street for 2 weeks. He's a veteran of the Korean and Vietnam Wars.
Now you see, the guy said they want to fend off criticism. So what happened was, huge homeless problem. The city put the homeless people in hotels in downtown Manhattan where the white liberals live at. Ironically, it was the white liberals who were clamoring for the city to do something and give resources to the homeless people. Because, you know, there's such good people and they don't like seeing these homeless people. These people need resources and yada, yada, yada. They're just misunderstood. These aren't really bad people or irresponsible people or people who have, you know, burned bridges or made a lot of mistakes or used drugs or got addictive personalities or been in and out of jail or antisocial. Every last one of them can be saved. So the city said, okay, here, you take them and put them right in their backyard. And that's what I told you about Kim Kardashian. When she wants a black criminal who killed a bunch of people or raped a bunch of people released, put that black criminal in Hollywood, Burbank, Calabasas, put him out there with those white liberals and see how they like it. You're seeing it now in this story. They don't like it. They're using black folk now, this black group, Pathways, and they drew up a map and they said, well, if you put them in black neighborhoods, we'll fund nonprofit organizations. So you know what's going to happen now? Instead of these homeless people staying in 5-star hotels converted into homeless shelters in downtown Manhattan, they're going to now be in black neighborhoods and they're going to be doing the same things. I hate that this is going to happen. I hope that they keep these homeless shelters in downtown Manhattan and let these white liberals see what their policies have done. They created this with their policies. Let them feel the brunt of it. Let them swim in it. But no, they're going to use black folk. Even a vet. Look, they're using a black Vietnam vet. They're using these two young brothers and a black Vietnam vet to be like, we'll give you some funding and you can help this black vet, as if all these people down here slugging people, using heroin in broad daylight, pooping in the middle of the street, grabbing women's butts, are this Vietnam vet. He's a rarity. But they're going to use black people the same way they used us with that damn voter ID law. Got us all thinking that black people don't got no IDs. When really, the reason they want to make it so you don't have to have an ID to go vote. The reason they wanted to make it so you don't have an ID, you have to have an ID when you go vote, is so illegals can vote. It has nothing to do with you black people. But if you look around Twitter or you look around the country, it's black people clamoring for you to be able to go and vote for the president of the United States and just show up and be like, yeah, I'm John Smith. Okay, all right, here's the ballot. And then go to another polling station. Yeah, I'm Steve Johnson. Okay, here's a ballot. You vote 50 times if you want to. Just show up, go anywhere you want, just keep. Or you can just not even be a citizen and just vote. Because black people are being made the face of it. So whenever they want to push some bullshit through, they use us. And you're going to see that in this story.
So they've created this map plotting 20 homeless hotels in Midtown West, and they want to fend off criticism that this is one of those NIMBY, not in my backyard crusades, because these bids actually fund homeless outreach teams like this one.
Good morning, sir. Still thinking about coming inside, man?
These social workers are from Urban Pathways, a nonprofit that tries to connect homeless people with permanent housing. On this morning, they found Alex Harper. He'd been living on the street for 2 weeks. He's a veteran of the Korean and Vietnam Wars.
I fought for my country, almost died for my country, or bled for my country. To come home and get treated like this, that's when people will be able to get help.
Homeless New Yorkers are more likely to be victims of crimes than they are to be criminals.
Frederick Schack is president of Urban Pathways. For years, he has called on the city to fund more construction of these buildings with supportive services to not only provide apartments to homeless people, but also addiction and mental health counseling. New York City has a $2.3 billion budget for homeless services that amounts to nearly $40,000 a year for every homeless person. Schack says that money could fund a lot of rent.
Are we spending that budget to help our homeless population wisely?
So there I would say no. And I've said it for years. The reality is that homelessness is the result of people not having a home, simply put.
The mayor's office has committed to creating 15,000 supportive housing units over 15 years. As for those temporary hotel shelters, the mayor says they will go back to normal.
The mayor continues to say, this is temporary, just be patient. Are you being patient?
Well, no. I mean, we're not patient at all. It's not good enough for civilized society to say we're not going to take care of people that have mental illnesses and put them somewhere clean and safe.
The de Blasio administration did not respond to several inquiries for this story. In the past, though, City Hall has stressed clearing out those congregate shelters and putting homeless people in their own hotel rooms has prevented infections and saved lives during the pandemic. David, back to you.
News 4's I-Team's Chris Glorioso. Chris, thank you.
Okay, so you got this guy, Kevin Keith, another black guy who Kim Kardashian and the liberal elites want released back into the black community because he said he didn't do nothing. And the victims, two of the victims of his horrific crime, are speaking out against Kim and saying she doesn't know the facts of the case. So she wants this man back in our community. And who is this man? Well, this man was a drug dealer, big time drug dealer in his neighborhood, in his little community. A guy started informing on him. He found out about the guy being an informant. He goes over the guy's house. The day he goes over the guy's house, the guy's not there. But guess who's there? A bunch of kids, because it was a sleepover. And a bunch of middle-aged women and women in their 20s and whatnot, and it's a couple men in their 20s. So it's a packed house in the hood. He starts questioning everybody. Where is your cousin? I need to know where he is, because he's informing on me. Cousin's not at the house, but nobody knows where he is. They know he's not in the house, but they don't know where he is. Hit 1 if you think the guy left and went to look for the cousin. Hit 2 if you think he killed everybody who was in the house. 1 for he left and went to look for the informant. 2 for he killed everybody in the house. And 2 people survived. These 2 who are now adults but were grievously injured. And this is who Kim Kardashian wants back in our community. This is who she's fighting for. And then when these people come back in our community and they reoffend, as they almost always do, no one cares unless it's a racial angle to it, like this one with Brandon Elliott, where he got out on parole for a crime he should have never seen the light of day for, and kicked and stomped some random 65-year-old woman in broad daylight in the middle of this downtown Manhattan. But no one cares when these guys come back to the black community, because of people like Kim Kardashian and the Hollywood elites that all want to complain and cry that somebody's innocent because they said they didn't do it. And the white sheriff hid evidence. Well, listen, who cares about any of that crap? Did he do it or not? Well, one of the cops said the N-word one time, so we got to overturn his conviction. There was evidence that should have been brought forth, but it wasn't. And the 6 of the 7 jurors were white. Did he kill everybody in that house except for these 2 kids who survived and told police that he did it? Forget about some sheriff said the N-word back in 1988. Because that's what a lot of this stuff is about. Oh, well, 6 of the 7 jurors were white, so we got to retry the case. And then they throw a whole bunch of racial bullshit in there, and they get a new jury, and everybody's old now, and they say that this testimony was taken by this. Everybody in the past was racist, basically. Whenever the case happened, everybody was racist. Everybody involved was racist. They played a race card in every angle. And they get these people put back in our communities. And next thing you know, they're reoffending. And things like what happened to that Asian lady happen to black people all the time.
He's arresting this man after surveillance video caught him repeatedly kicking a 65-year-old woman who was on her way to church. Eva Pilgrim joins us now with more. And we want to warn everybody, the video is disturbing. Good morning, Eva.
Good morning, Robin. It was the middle of the day. She was walking here behind me to church during one of the holiest weeks of the year. But before she got there, she was brutally attacked. This morning, police say this man, 38-year-old Brandon Elliott, is behind bars, arrested overnight on charges of felony assault as a hate crime after this brutal beating of a 65-year-old Asian woman. Authorities say surveillance video shows Elliott violently kicking the woman to the ground and then repeatedly on the head. They say he also made anti-Asian statements telling the woman she didn't belong here.
It's just outlandish for me to think that no one intervened.
In one video, door staff and a delivery person are just feet away, appearing to watch from inside a building. One person then shuts the door.
Close their door on a woman lying on the sidewalk. Isn't that the perfect symbolism of exactly what is happening right now?
The building's owner announcing it suspended the door staff pending an investigation. It's also trying to identify the delivery person. Eventually, someone did help the woman. She was taken to the hospital with serious injuries. Hate crimes against Asian Americans are up nearly 150% in major cities across the country, up by at least 833% in New York City.
We've often been viewed as invisible and as foreigners. People need to understand that Asian Americans are just as American as anyone else.
And NYPD is stepping up patrols in predominantly Asian neighborhoods, but this attack happened just steps from the heart of Times Square.
In tweets like this is what white liberals do. This white liberal, she knows who's doing these attacks. And she knows about the problems in the black community. She knows about the murder rate. She knows that whatever city she lives in, I don't even have to know what city she lives in, that the majority of the people that are murdered every year in her city are black. She knows this. She won't say anything about either one. But yet she claims to care about black people. She'll have a Black Lives Matter sign in her yard. She'll have all the right hashtags on her timeline. She'll say all the right things at dinner parties. She'll send her kids to private school. All white private schools, though. And she'll do everything she can to stay away from that criminal element in the black community. But she'll get online and say, Brandon Elliott attacked an elderly Asian woman on her way to church. Trump constantly yelling about the China virus caused attacks on Asians. Trump, does this make you proud? She doesn't even see black people. She doesn't even see black people. The people who are doing this, Peggy, are black. However, though, Peggy, %90 of the people who are killed in your city are black. What do you got to say about that, Peggy? So Peggy here, she's from Birmingham. Birmingham, Alabama. Let's go to the gun memorial from Birmingham. Old Birmingham, Alabama. I told you I didn't need to even know what city she was from. Every city These white liberals won't touch this. But they'll claim to be doing something good for black people by ignoring our role in the anti-Asian attacks and releasing black criminals accused who found guilty rightfully of horrific crimes back into our community. But they won't touch this. They will not touch this. What group do you not see on this? You see some whites, you saw a Latino, you see a bunch of Negro. What group do you not see on this? Just like in New York. And these people are not all thugs, man. Okay? All right? They don't even see you, Negro. These white liberals don't even see you. They don't even see you. She's talking about goddamn Asian people getting beat up in New York.
And the reason why I'm basically out here is because, if you notice, the majority of the attacks been by black men. So I'm just letting the world know that we all don't think like that. I stand here with the Asian community, and I'm teaching my son that hatred is not the way of the world.